Hello everybody, welcome to Learn Livestreaming Live. My name's John Lacey. Today on the show we're going to be talking all about your content creation stack and what are the individual tools, and I suppose for today's purposes we're probably going to be focusing more on software than hardware, but obviously having some hardware is important too. But we want to think about what you're currently using, what you might like to use in the future, what you might need to learn about your existing tool sets, and the dangers and opportunities of sort of looking over the fence at other options. So it's going to be a lot to unpack, but we are going out to all the various places today, so let me know in the chat where you're watching from. It's great to have your company. So today I think what I'll do to start off with is just talk about my content creation stack, and there's a really good chance if you've been here a hot minute you will know a lot of these things already. But I kind of want to preface this with the reality that these are the tools that work for me. These may or may not work for you, and that's fine. We've all got to find things that work for us. And that's the important thing about your workflows, is that they have to work for you. Okay. Hello. So Business Growth Ready writes, hello from the real Birmingham, UK. I don't know if that's a reference to something. Saeed is saying hello from Germany. Great to have your company today. And I always forget that the chat bot has something set up to do its thing in there as well. But all right, let's talk about this. So today we're talking all about your content creation stack. What are the things that you're using? And a couple of reasons, actually, before I even get into my stack. The reason I want to talk about this week is two things. One of them's really painful. Some weird stuff happening with CapCut. So CapCut is this video editor that works in the browser and on the apps, and it's owned by the parent company of TikTok. They've updated their terms of service recently. I'm not a lawyer, but there are some very concerning sounding things in there about using your likeness, and it's certainly made me nervous enough to just remove that app from all of my devices. So that can be a thing. The other thing that I've noticed too, also talking to some other content creators, there can be a danger of having 40 different apps to build your content out with. And I think that can be a problem. And that can lead to another problem, which is the AppSumo anonymous thing. Okay, so this is a side quest, but Said says, totally unrelated remark, I see XP and a leaderboard in the chat. Is this new for me, or is it a new feature? This is a feature that's rolled out to most people on YouTube these days. I do think it depends a little bit where you're watching me from. If it's on a mobile device or a computer, I think those two things might be a little different. I might even just open this up in the background. Are you watching on a phone, Saeed? I'm not actually seeing it on desktop, but I have the leaderboard feature is a thing that a lot of YouTubers have been talking about recently. So it's just another example of things that are changing and moving all the time. And you might be incentivized to keep adding chat comments if you want to stay on the leaderboard. But Business Growth Ready writes, same here. I went to CapCut's funeral on my devices. Yeah. And I don't really want to say too much about that. I feel like TikTok has been really unfairly maligned for political reasons. And I think CapCut was the beginner option that Sam and I would recommend to most people. And you just can't do that anymore, because when they start talking about using your likeness, that's a problem. That's a problem. So Saeed writes that he's using Chrome on desktop. Interestingly, I was using Chrome on desktop and I wasn't really seeing anything, but I'm just going to reopen that tab in the background. Hopefully it won't slow things down too much, because I'm really curious now. Oh, there we go. Top fans. Okay, I can see this now. All right. That's really interesting. And there is a bit of a delay, I think. Well, I've got that muted, so that's fine. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've known this feature has been around for a little while. Not I haven't seen many people using it on my stream, so that's really cool that it's available. But anyway, that's a bit of a side quest for today. But definitely check out the leaderboard feature if you want to. But I'm going to talk about my content creation tools, the bulk of them. These are changing. These will change over time, and I guess we'll have this discussion later on, but there's always that trade-off between sticking with what you know and moving to something new and really deciding if it's appropriate or if it's going to be worthwhile to do that. But all right, let's get stuck into this. The first one, no surprise to anybody in the chat, I'm sure, is OBS Studio. This is the software that I use for pretty much everything to do with video outside of video editing. You know, obviously this works for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and it is free and open source software. So I already love the fact that it is free because I don't want to pay for this every month for the rest of the time. And I guess that's another consideration with your tools is what can you actually, you know, what can you pay for outright or what can you use for free? I don't love the subscription model. Although it's good in the sense that if you stop using something, you can stop paying for it, and that's good too. But I really do like to pay for things outright if I can. But this, you know, obviously OBS is software for live streaming and for local video recording and showing up in webcam. And I've covered so much on this in the past and on my other shows. We won't probably dwell on this too long. But the thing is, and I used to use another program. I used to use something called TechSmith's Camtasia. And it's not bad. Like, it's not a bad option, but it is very much for beginners. And at some point, their social media started talking about how much better Camtasia was than OBS. And that kind of hurt my soul because I love this software, but also it's not really designed to do the same things, but also I can record so many more sources simultaneously in OBS than I can in Camtasia. Like in Camtasia, I can get my video and one screen share, but in OBS I can get so many more things. And again, I don't want to pick on that software because I think it's really worthwhile, especially for beginners, but I've just simply outgrown it. Saeed is saying that OBS got a minor update last week, 31.0.4. I really should take more of my own advice and actually test these things out, but I've only ever had one problem with the update process, and I was so new to everything that it was so easy to rebuild. So I just click update every time. It's you know, maybe not if I'm going live in the next 5 minutes, but otherwise it's pretty much the thing. All right, so I'm just going to go back to the chat. So Business Growth Ready, right? Day-to-day, I normally use Final Cut. I use CapCut for shorts and some customer social media. However, it's forced me to finally pull my finger out on DaVinci Resolve instead of dabbling with it for 6 years. Yes, and I actually watched one of your videos about the different tabs in DaVinci Resolve last night. So, I really like DaVinci, and we'll definitely get there in a second. I think like the Final Cut Pro is only for Mac, as far as I know. And there's another Mac favorite that everybody likes to talk about, and I just don't own a Mac, so you know a lot of those things are just off the table for me straight away. All right, so I mean, you know, we're already talking about it, so let's go there. DaVinci Resolve. And again, this is something I spoke about on the last episode of this particular show. This is this great software. And the thing about it is it's industry software. You can literally make movies. You can literally make Netflix series on this software. But you can also use it for simple social media clips. And it gives you all of the options. And you don't necessarily need to explore all those options. You can just choose the ones that you particularly want to run with at a given time. The thing that's amazing about this is literally a free version. And you can do so much in the free version. In fact, I think the free version is more than I've ever needed. And there are entire tabs that I actually don't really get involved in too much unless I'm really playing. The one thing I will say about DaVinci Resolve though is you do kind of need a modern computer to work with it. So if you're using a 15-year-old PC, this is going to be a problem. And I think every time I download this software, I think it's at least 3 GB. So again, you probably need a decent internet connection to get it in the first place and install updates. But it does some really magical things. And again, the fact that you're buying it outright, if you do purchase it, which I kind of have done with the speed editor, which is such a beautiful thing. We might need to revisit that in a second. In some ways we probably still need to be conscious of the terms and conditions changing, but I don't think they're gonna pull a cap card on us anytime soon. So I feel really good about this. There is a learning curve with both OBS and DaVinci Resolve, and I'm very conscious of the fact I don't know much about DaVinci Resolve right now, but I kind of know enough to do the things that I need to do. And again, I don't really need a paid version, but I just love what Blackmagic Design were doing, so I kind of wanted to support them. So I did buy that bit of hardware, so I could show that off. In fact, I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to try it. There we go. There's the speed editor, which I've been playing with, and it's really, really cool. And there are just different ways of working with the different tabs, and you can just go to the edit page and do some cuts and export it. That works really well. The cut page itself is kind of amazing once you wrap your head around it. And I genuinely didn't understand what the point of it was for the longest time. So I get it if it's a little confusing at first, but that is something you can do. Obviously, we've got things like the edit page, the color page for color correction. Again, this is where the beautiful magic mask stuff happens. Again, I don't know that I need a magic mask every video, but when I do need it or I want to play with things, it is really cool. It's very easy to work with. Fairlight also gives us our audio options. Fusion. Bizarrely, Fusion was the thing that got me into DaVinci Resolve in the first place, because I'm such an old man when it comes to technology that I've used things like Macromedia Flash and Adobe Flash and a lot of that keyframe animation stuff, and that there's something actually kind of comforting about coming back to Fusion to create assets for my live streams. And weirdly, I don't know that I have many of them actually available in this scene collection, but it is pretty cool. All right, let's go back to the chat because I think there's a few things happening over here. Said writes, DaVinci also got an update last week, by the way. Yeah, everything's being updated all the time. It's crazy. Hello to Stefan, who's watching from Sweden. Great to have your company today. Said also writes, $300 for a lifetime license for a software that you use daily or weekly and is so powerful is worth it. Haven't bought it yet, but when I upgrade my PC or there is a deal, I will do so. Yeah, and it's like, I can't overstate how much I didn't need the pro version. I like the studio version, which is the paid version. But I just love this company so much. I wanted to give them a little bit of money. And there are some really cool features for the pro version. There's a lot of AI stuff in there, and some of the AI stuff I love, and some of it I don't like at all. I have a very complicated relationship with AI, and I'm sure the people in the chat know that already. But one of the great things is it will sort of transcribe my audio and give me captions. And unlike a lot of other software, that actually happens on your own personal computer. So that's not going up to the cloud. So you're not necessarily feeding a large language model out in the wild somewhere. It's all happening on your personal device. And again, I don't think that seems like a big deal to a lot of people, but if you were doing videos for your company and you do have trade secrets that you're talking about, you probably want to be a little bit mindful about where you're sharing that stuff. But let's go back to the DaVinci Resolve webpage here. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that you can do. And I guess that's the thing. And I think it's the reason that the free version exists is because they want people to join their ecosystem. And Adobe used to be a lot more proactive with this kind of thing in the past. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, including AI multicam, which I kind of want to try at some point. I might even need to have a guest on the show again so I can do this properly. But essentially, it can analyze the audio and the video, and it's sort of looking to see who is speaking. And here it's actually making different cuts, but it could also potentially split up an audio waveform and put it on different tracks. So if you recorded in one track and you want to split that stuff, the AI can actually go some distance towards doing that for you, which is kind of mind-boggling. All right, multi-user collaboration. So again, if you're collaborating with other people, that might be a useful thing to do. There's so much in here, and again, this is sort of getting back to the thing that Business Growth Ready. In fact, I think it's your other channel. It's not the Business Growth Ready. It's the Reluctant Creators. And forgive me if I'm confusing things, but I'm pretty sure they're both your channels. Let me know in the chat. I have this problem sometimes where I will see names in the chat and I'll make connections in my brain that may or may not be correct. So by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. That would be good to know. So we've got the media, we've got the cuts tab, the edit tab, the fusion tab, the color tab, the Fairlight, and the deliver, which is essentially where you're exporting your video. We've got all those good things. We might even play in DaVinci later on today, depending on how we go for time. And again, like, I'm not making a movie. I'm not doing sort of 3D audio. I don't need all these features, but I love knowing that they're there, that I could grow into them potentially if I need them. And if I don't need to dwell on them. And I think that's an issue I see crop up for a lot of people, where they get overwhelmed by all the features. And like, you really don't need to know everything to get value out of some of these pieces of software. Yes, okay. Thank you. Business Growth Ready is saying, yes, Reluctant Creators is his other channel. Yes, awesome. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got that media and delivery like this. And I don't really want to sit here doing a plug for, like, an ad for DaVinci Resolve, but I do really like it. Oh, here we go. I wish I had some controversial music here. So Saeed writes, I started using Descript more, but only for adding some captions or if I need a transcript. Yeah, Descript is one of those things a lot of people like and use. I think they really appreciate the fact that they can edit via text. And again, I'm such an old man that I've been editing waveforms for, 25 odd years probably. So I'm very comfortable in doing that. But again, it sounds like Sage's using that predominantly for transcripts, which, is great. I think you do need to go in and check those. I do see a lot of people using all kinds of AI tools to generate captions and then not checking them. And, especially if it is a long piece of content, I realize that can be time consuming. But it is worthwhile just putting your eyes across them and just making sure that they're correct. Because I need to post this somewhere, but I made a video about DaVinci Resolve and I said DaVinci Resolve and it translated it into something very weird and exotic that I thought was hilarious. And I do have a screenshot of that somewhere, but anyway. So just be mindful of that. But yeah, I mean, there's another great tool. And again, I guess what I want to say, and I think I said it at the beginning of the show, but I want to say it again, is simply, it doesn't really matter what your content creation stack looks like. The important thing is that, though, it works for you and that forms part of your workflow and processes. Interestingly, I'm going to go to another piece of software. And again, all of this comes back to what you're actually creating and what your goals are and, where the destinations are as well. But one thing that I do like using, and it's funny because as I'm working more and more with DaVinci Resolve, I don't know that I need this as much as I used to, but it is Hindenburg Pro. And I have no idea why it's called Hindenburg Pro, but it is essentially an audio editor. And again, this is interesting because this actually gives us the same sort of Descript quality where it will transcribe your audio if you have that available to you. And I actually didn't want that. So I paid for a version that doesn't include the transcription, so I don't use the transcription part of this at all. But the thing I like about this is it's really good at creating audio content really quickly. It has options to analyze your audio and add compression and EQ, which in a way that even me as someone who has studied audio engineering in the past, I just prefer to let Hindenburg do this for me. And I can sort of bring in different pieces of content. I can drag video files in. And again, I'm only really editing the audio when I do that, but I can do that as well. And the other thing that I guess both DaVinci Resolve and Hindenburg Pro do that I find a little bit mind-boggling and I don't completely understand is that when we export it, they do it with the LUFs, the loudness units. Um, and I'm sure a lot of content creators would be like, yeah, that doesn't really matter to me. But if you are someone who listens to a lot of podcasts and they're all really loud and then they get to yours and it's really quiet and you don't know why, that potentially is a problem. And I've been listening to a particular podcast that the audio sounds amazing, but it's just so quiet. And I kind of wanted to have a discussion with that person. But I guess, getting back to the transcription side of this is Happy Scribe, and this is something that I purchased actually from AppSumo. I don't buy a lot of things from AppSumo. I think it's kind of the confectionery aisle of a supermarket. You'll end up buying all kinds of stuff you don't actually need, and I think that's kind of a problem. But in this case, this is a former show. This is about cameras from live streaming, which is a very old one. I guess if I zoom in maybe a little bit, the first thing you'll see is it doesn't know how to spell Saeed. So that's a problem for my show, where I mention him frequently. But I guess what we probably could do is just find and replace. So if I go Saeed and replace like that. So there are 4 different instances of that spelling. And there's a really good chance with AI that it's going to find some other ways of spelling Saeed in particular. But the great thing about this is I can tell it to transcribe this. It will create the transcription. I can go through and edit this. I can export this in a number of different files. I can also convert it to close enough, Saeed writes. Yes, yeah. So I mean, this is the thing. I think this and you won't find me saying nice things about AI very often, but in this case, I think this use is actually quite kind of useful. But again, we do need to go in and double check it for accuracy. There are actually options to create dubs. So if you want your video to appear in a different language, and again, I think that's some AI sorcery. It may or may not sound like you. I've never really tried, and to be honest, I'm a person that knows English and really English only, so I don't really want to put stuff out in the world that I can't quality control. All right, so Said writes, and I think he's quoting from somewhere. They named it in tribute to the iconic live radio broadcast of the 1937 disaster. That makes sense, actually, because this is software that was originally created for radio stations. And part of the reason why there are so many... I'm told the reason that it is the way it is today is simply that they needed to cut audio together for news broadcasts really quickly. So that is good to know. Let's go back to Business Growth Ready, who writes, did use Pinnacle Studio till 2013 and then Premiere Pro until 2018, yeah. And there are all kinds of options, and I guess this is probably as good a time as any to talk about maybe the trade-offs with staying with something you already know versus moving to something you don't know, because there's always the shiny new object. And the thing, like, we talk about Descript, we talk about I'm trying to think of the Descript competitors out there. I think Riverside does something similar. There are a lot of these tools, and especially if you go to AppSumo, you will see that there are so many that kind of do all the same things. There are Otter AI and different things that will listen to audio and transcribe it. There's kind of a million ways of getting there, and you don't really need to know a million ways. You probably need 1 or 2. You know, what's kind of weird about that, and Said's writing, does Pinnacle still exist? I remember them from TV cards from the early 2000s. I'm pretty sure they do. And in fact, I'm sure I got an email from them trying to sell me some software recently. Let me just have a look at this. So Pinnacle Studio 26 is the pro level video editing software for Windows. $127.99 Australian, including tax, if you buy the full version. I'm not saying it's bad, but I, in a world where in a world where DaVinci Resolve exists, I don't know that I'd be reaching for this because it seems to have some very similar options. I mean, it has DVD authoring, which is interesting. Audio ducking, so that's an ultimate exclusive. So you pay extra for audio ducking, which is kind of weird. You know, you kind of want the music in the background to go down at a point where you're speaking, and that's, you know, you potentially have to pay more for that. You have to pay more for an alpha channel. You have to pay more for blend modes, potentially. So that's kind of odd. I mean, it exists. There are lots of things out there that still exist that you would be very surprised to discover exist. And it's always interesting when there's a piece of software that you haven't heard of in 30 years that somehow is still out there making money. So I guess, you know, you can definitely play with that. You can explore that. I imagine they probably have a trial somewhere if you really wanted to check it out. Free trials. There we go. I mean, you know, and like, I'm not saying don't try this if you're interested in trying it, but it's weird because and I think again, I bought a humble bundle about video editing or something, and it actually included some tools to capture a number of different screens and my video camera at the same time, but it was kind of clunky. It was kind of old. It wasn't great, but it does exist. So there we go. So I think getting back to my point, before I think I got a little distracted there, you know, we have all these options out there, and by all means, be aware of what's out there. Try them if you've got time, if you've got the energy. But I think there's a danger in jumping from program to program all the time because you're kind of robbing yourself of the opportunity to learn one of those programs deeply. And I think these days, especially, there are lots of people that are using 15 different apps to create results that they probably could get in a single app, but they just don't know the features are there. They just don't know how to find that stuff. And this is the point at which I have to advocate for the use of the University of YouTube, because there are so many great tutorials out there, especially for DaVinci Resolve. There's so much great stuff out there. And I watch a lot of those videos, and sometimes I'm like, yes, I need to know how to do that today. Like, I need that for a video I'm working on. Other times I just watch and go, hey, that's really interesting. I might like it. I might add it to a playlist if I need to revisit it somewhere down the track. But it's one of those things that I think there are lots of people paying a lot of money, especially for monthly subscription apps, not knowing that actually some of those apps do all of the things and you don't need to use the other apps. And it could just be out of habit. It could just be the way that you needed to work 2 years ago and you haven't kept up with the updates. You don't really know what's in there. And especially if you look at something like DaVinci, like it's got so much in there. And I'm always walking this line of saying, hey, it can do everything, but you don't need to know the everything it can do right now, because that will just be really overwhelming. So just keep that in mind. And I guess the other thing that I do hear people suggest is that if you do have monthly subscriptions, set up some kind of tracking system for that, whether it's a spreadsheet. Just be aware of the things that it can do and what you're using it for. And potentially, you know, at different times, go in and say, hey, do I really still need to keep paying this $30 a month for this product, or can I do something different? So I guess those are the kinds of things that I think are important to think about. If we go back to HappyScribe, and again, HappyScribe is probably a really interesting example of that, because if I was paying a monthly subscription for this, I probably wouldn't use it anymore, simply because the studio version of DaVinci has the same sort of capability. But because I bought it as a lifetime license a few years ago, it's there. I've got 6 hours of transcription every month, so I can do whatever I want with it. Again, there are lots of new AI stuff in here that I don't personally touch. I'm not particularly interested in, but you know, you could if you wanted to. So the great thing about this is I can go in to check out my speakers. This one's a really interesting example because it knows that I'm the only speaker here. So I can maybe change this and say John or John Lacey. Click save, save changes. Probably what I would do is I would just play through this and I would listen to it and I would see the words that are being highlighted, which again, you can't hear the audio of this, but I can. And I just make sure that it's correct. And what you can do at the end of each of these paragraphs, we can essentially mark this as reviewed. So we can do that and I can keep going. And especially for this, where it is like an hour's worth of content, that's a good way of keeping track of this. But the great thing about this too is I can come up and I can export from here. So I could export subtitles as a SRT file, a VTT file. There's a whole bunch of different options here. The LaTeX files, interactive transcript is interesting. I've never tried that one. I might try that one actually. That looks really intriguing. So it's going to generate and export this stuff. And I'm really curious. Oh, okay. It's a zip file. So that's going to be interesting. I wonder if that includes the video. Let's find out together. All right. All right, I'm just gonna create a folder to put this in. Let's open a new tab. I'm gonna drag this index file on here. So this is actually, that's really interesting. I don't know if I need this. Like, I don't know if this is particularly useful, but it is curious. And let's zoom in quite a bit so you can actually see what's happening here. I've got the video embed. I've got the playback speed, which I can change. I can search the script. And again, as a classic example, it says hello to Jerry, Gerri, and I know it's Jerry, Jerry. But again, we've got that, and that's really interesting. I never knew that feature existed, so I'm distracted as hell by that. But anyway, that's fine. I'm not really sure, like, if the video is included in that download. I don't think it is, so it must be referencing the video from somewhere else. But that's a mystery outside of the scope of today, so I'll try not to get too distracted. I'm being really distracted by shiny objects. But I guess the thing I wanted to say here is once we've got our transcript, if we're happy with our transcript, we can do that. But there is also an option, and again, I feel like they probably moved this somewhere else, so I probably need to just double check. There was an option to actually... Oh, there we go. So create subtitles, go to subtitles. And this will take a couple of minutes to do its thing. I'm assuming it'll end up here. And you can see it's doing the conversion in real time. The great thing, and this is if you happen to be using HappyScript, HappyScribe. This is something I do want to call out is generate the script first and then convert the script to subtitles, because that first transcription will reduce the amount of hours you've got in your credits. So once that's done, it'll do its thing. That'll probably take a little bit of time to actually go because it is 55 minutes long. But once we've got that in there, we can play with that. We can actually adjust how the captions appear on top of the video. We can export the video, including the captions burnt into it, with some options there as well. The other great sort of unintended benefit, I think, of using HappyScribe is that I actually have backups of all my videos in this software. If anything happens, I lose them on my computers, I can come in here and actually grab them again. So that's something that's really worth calling out and worth articulating, I think. So we'll come back to that when it's done its thing, but I think I'm going to go into DaVinci. I'm going to talk about DaVinci a little bit because it is honestly my favorite thing at the moment. I'm so psyched to have this program and to have the studio version and to have my beautiful speed editor. So as Saeed mentioned earlier, there has been a recent update. lots of things happening. So we'll go back to here. The other thing too that I've only just learned about is the different project libraries. So at the moment, I don't have a lot happening here, but I think in future I might try to organize these as series or brands or topics. And again, the example they use is, you know, if you've got a different show that you're editing for Netflix, set up a new project library, and you can do that down here. All you need to do is put in the name and then browse to a location. If you're doing something in the cloud, you can connect to that as well. I don't really know how that works, but that's an option. So again, if we go to, and this is the one from last week's show of OBS Obsessed. And there's a lot happening here. There's probably honestly too much happening here because I just wanted to show people how we could record different tracks and different sources. So I have an extraordinary amount of stuff. And in fact, there we go, Saeed. DaVinci 20.0.1 is available, and I haven't downloaded it yet. So again, there might be even more exciting things after the show when I download this for real. But yeah, so we got this. We've got the different tabs. So we've got the media. So we can think about working with those. We've got the cut option, which is probably a really worthwhile place to start, especially on a project like this, where I've got so many different sources and I kind of want to make certain ones visible and hide other ones at different times. And then we've got the edit page. And I think if you've done any kind of editing and video editing software, this is probably the place that you want to hang out, so it'd be the most familiar. But we do have things like Fusion, which is, you know, for the visual effects and the key, I can't even think of the word, the animation, the things that I've personally used this for a lot of logo stinger animations for OBS. We've also got the color options. I have played around with this a little bit, but I've got to be honest, it kind of goes over my head. There's so much in here. We've got the audio options. So again, we can sort of really get into our waveforms. We can make them larger. Again, there's not a lot of content to this particular example because it was only an example showing the different ways of recording. But there were all kinds of great things we can do. The clip operations, we can normalize the audio. And it actually does have presets that are specifically for YouTube, which is really cool. If we go back in, we've got a whole bunch of AI tools. So dialogue matcher, voice converts, checkboard to new tracks. So again, if that's one of those things where you've got multiple people talking, it'll try to identify who's talking when and actually move them to their own separate track, which is really cool. In fact, this is such a weird use case for this, and I'm going to mute everything else. And I have so many things going on here. I'm actually going to try this audio checker board thing on this track, which is the combined track of me speaking, DaVinci Resolve playing a video in the background, and also some a keyboard playing, like a musical keyboard playing. So I'm going to click on this one. It's going to transcribe the audio. And again, what I'm using it for here isn't really what it's intended for, but I'm curious to see what it can do with this. So at the moment, and again, I don't have OBS set up for you guys to hear this, so I will just listen to it and tell you what I'm hearing. Actually, I've muted the wrong tracks. Hang on, let me mute this one. And unmute these two new ones, which I'm pretty sure are the new ones here. Okay, so it doesn't, it's really for audio of people speaking. It doesn't know what to do with that music, which is fair enough, really. It's not really what it's designed to do, but I might just get rid of those ones there. So there are a whole bunch of different things we can do, and ultimately we have our options to export or deliver. And again, this is where we do get all those wonderful presets. And, you know, if you don't find the one you want here, you can create your own. So, I mean, we've got things like YouTube 1080, we've got Vimeo, we've got TikTok, all kinds of stuff, and you can make your own. I've got one here. I've got a couple here actually. So QuickTime with Alpha. So this in some ways is the thing that brought me to DaVinci in the first place, is that I love the fact that I could export to a QuickTime format with transparency, and that would be really good for the stingers in OBS, because part of the screen needs to be sort of transparent at different points in the timeline. So I've got that there. This does produce incredibly large files, like a gigabyte for like 15 seconds or something. I don't remember exactly how that is. There are entire videos on that on the channel if you want to go back and look at that. But also I've got one that's just an MP4 format. And there are cool settings in here. So again, especially with the subtitles, if you've generated some subtitles, you can export them as well. And you can choose as a separate file as embedded captions, which means they're actually inside the video file format. And depending on what software you play it with, they may or may not be able to show that, or burnt into the video, which will actually have it physically imprinted there. So we have that. We can add to the render queue and we can do our things. So if I close this current project, and I probably made a whole bunch of changes there that aren't particularly useful, and I really need to start organizing my library a little bit better, because there's so much stuff in here and I don't remember what half of it is actually for. Let me just change this, switch the project settings. We don't really want this to be, I don't think I want it to be vertical, but maybe. So again, that's kind of an example of the captions that have been transcribed by DaVinci. And if you can actually get captions elsewhere and import them in here. The difference is that DaVinci, if it does it itself, it will know exactly which word is being said at a given time, and there are sort of animated captions that will tell you which word I'm on in a particular place in this transcription. So that's another thing we can do as well. If I go back to Happy Scribe, I'm sure this thing will have run its course now. So I can go to my subtitles for this particular video. Again, I haven't really quality controlled this one particularly well. And when this does load, and it might need a moment. In fact, if I click here, you can see that we've got those captions there. The great thing about this is that we can actually, and I think they've moved where a lot of this stuff is, so it's up here now, subtitle design. So we can change the fonts, we can change whether it's a box, an outline, a wrap, or a solid box. We can have background colors, we can change the position of this, can move it up and down. We can change the color potentially if we wanted to do that. Obviously not that color, but you get the idea. And now when we go to export, we have the option to export the captions, but we also have the option to export the video with captions burnt in. So those are our two options here. I don't really use this one very often. I much prefer to go into DaVinci and be a bit more granular about how this works. But essentially this is showing me what it will look like, and I can export the video from there. But I can also export the subtitle script here as well, and I've got all those different options for a Word document or a text file or SRT or Excel, which is an interesting one. I guess that gives you the time references as well. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things, and I guess the thing I'm trying to say to you, and I'm trying to say it to myself as well, is that a lot of these tools that I'm reaching for, they're not simple tools. They are elaborate tools. And I think there's a lot of benefit to actually learning these deeply. And like, no offense to anybody that's using easier tools. Like, I know people love Canva. They can just drag, a template in and change some text. That's fine. I don't think that necessarily makes you a graphic designer if you're doing that. But if you do want to check these tools out, the big thing that I really recommend is to actually go in and watch the YouTube tutorials, because they really will make a lot of difference. And also read the manual. That's the other thing about DaVinci in particular, is that it does have a really epic manual, and it goes for many, many hundreds of pages, I think, from memory. but I think it is definitely worth checking out. So that's something I would recommend as well. But I'm really curious, what are the tools that you're using at the moment, and how are they working for you? Are you happy with them? Are you prepared to stick with them? Or are you sort of looking at other options? And I'm really curious to see how people think about those trade-offs, because I know the marketing can be very seductive. It can encourage you to jump ship very, very quickly. So it's something that you might want to try and keep in mind, because although let's take the video editing option as an example, because if you know how to edit a video, you know how to edit video. What is different is maybe where you need to click or the keyboard shortcuts. And even in DaVinci, and I'll just I'll go back to DaVinci and show you this. So if you, and this might be really good for business growth already, if he's still around, we have some options in here. I'm not really sure exactly where they are. I'll have to find them. I have a feeling they might not be in here, but editing, color, fairlight, playback, control panel, metadata. All right, I'm not entirely sure where they are, but let me just see if I can find them. There we go. So if you go to the DaVinci Resolve menu, keyboard customization, which is Control Alt K, I think. This will tell you what the keyboard shortcuts are. And again, if you've got a Stream Deck, you can set up buttons for these sorts of things. But if you go up to this top right-hand corner, it actually gives you the options for DaVinci Resolve. But if you're moving from Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or Avid or Pro Tools, you can actually click on these options and it will change the keyboard binding to things that are more familiar in that particular software. So, you know, that again, I don't come from any of those. Like, I've done a little bit in Pro Tools, but again, that's probably 10 years ago. So I will keep it here. But if you do come from Premiere Pro, you can click on that and it can automatically switch these things up for you. And I think you can go even further and actually, you know, change some of these things, adjust the commands and the keyboard shortcuts for them. But yeah, I mean, in some ways, learning to edit video is its own discrete skill set, if you will, but then you just need to find ways of applying that to new software if you decide to do that. All right. So Saeed says, I prefer tools that have been on the market for years over the latest hyped releases. Yeah. And again, I feel like I've said so many disparaging things about AppSumo, and here's another one. A lot of the time, those lifetime deals, they're given out to create a flush of income into a business. And that business, you know, the lifetime deal that you're buying is for the lifetime of that business. And that business might go out in 2 or 3 months after you've made that purchase. So in some ways, you do need to be mindful of that. It could be a really, really epic deal for a short period of time. And then, especially if it's cloud-based software, you know, once that business goes away, that deal essentially becomes moot. You won't get your money back. It's a whole thing. So even just finding a business that seems to have a you know, a meaningful business model that they're not going to go out of business anytime soon is a good thing too. Business Growth Ready writes, I always think it's worth taking the bullet and learning the new keyboard shortcuts, because then any training material won't make sense if you've changed all yours. Yes, I think that's true. Yeah. And it's part of the reason why I don't change how OBS looks too much when I'm doing my tutorials, because I really want it to look like the thing that the average person will see when they download it and install it for the first time. So, you know, it's probably worthwhile learning the DaVinci ones. And I'm really, I hope I don't regret saying this out loud, but I have such a good feeling about DaVinci Resolve that I think I'm going to be using it for years and years to come. And I'm really excited about using it. And I think that's another thing too. As much as I want to tell you not to jump ship too often, I think sometimes you can get in a rut, and anything that'll make the process more interesting or more fun or more exciting is definitely something worthwhile exploring, because a lot of this can be tedious and like you can do it in your sleep. And then at that point you think, well, should I be doing it at all? Maybe I want to be doing something different. Sayed makes the point that it's never your own lifetime. Yeah, it's it's often the lifetime of the product or the lifetime of the company. It's not usually a human lifespan. No, absolutely not. All right. So again, I think it's worthwhile reflecting on these things periodically. So if you're happy with the way you're working, that's brilliant. If you want to explore other options, that's fine as well. But just think about, what other things that you want to do. Again, I know if anybody else on the planet did a show on this topic, they would talk endlessly about AI tools. I don't particularly love that stuff. I really do want to handcraft the things that I put out into the world. And I know that's maybe just a me thing. I'm just a weirdo, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. But there are ways of using AI tools to create clips and things as well. I personally like looking for the points that I want to emphasize in my recordings if I do want to make shorts out of them later on. But again, you do you. I'm not your boss. I'm not your parents. You got to find out what works well for you. So that's something that I think is really worth considering. I guess the other thing I didn't really touch on was that your budget does definitely play an important part in these considerations. So if you've got, $300 a month to spend on tools, that'll give you a lot more options than if you have $0. And I guess the reason I bring that up is so many of my favorite tools are actually free and open source, or they're things I paid for once and I don't need to keep paying for them if I don't want to. So, OBS again is the classic example, but even if you don't want to use OBS, there are other free options out there. There is Meld Studio, which I've played with once or twice on this show. And I don't think it's bad. I do think I'm such a control freak that I will probably stick with OBS, but that's something you can explore as well. So think about what you can do with the things that you already have. And again, that could be just using your phone as your camera rather than buying a new camera. Unless you've got the funds to do that. And, I love a bit of gear, so I'm not going to tell you not to do that, but just make sensible decisions when you do that. So I hope this has been a useful conversation. And again, I think it's worthwhile just reflecting on what you're using, how it's going, whether you want to change it, whether you're happy to dig in deeper. I'm definitely going to be going and watching a whole bunch of DaVinci Resolve studio tutorials after this show and drink some more coffee. But thank you so much for your company today. I hope you have a great week and have a great weekend when you get there. Next week, I'll be doing OBS Obsessed, my show all about OBS Studio. And again, I'm never really entirely sure what I'm going to cover this far ahead of time. So if there is something you're interested in or want to learn more about, let me know in the chat. But thank you so much for your company today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So I do have one of those fusion animations in this OBS collection. That's an example. Again, not the most exciting thing in the world, but it does use that transparency, and transparency is huge when you come to layering things. Saeed writes that Incubate Camo can also be used for free. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things that have sort of free options or free trials. Play with them, see where you end up. But thank you again for your company. I'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Thank you.